Subscribe to Storylab. Now let's begin. The rain hammered against the windows of the small cabin in Montana's Bitterroot Mountains. Clint Randall sat in his workshop, methodically cleaning a vintage Winchester rifle that had belonged to his father. At 52, his hands were steady as a surgeon's, muscle memory from 27 years of operations that officially never happened. His silver-streaked hair and weathered face told the story of a man who'd seen too much, but his sharp gray eyes remained alert, always calculating. The phone on his workbench buzzed. His son's name flashed on the screen. Dad. Devin's voice was tight, controlled. At 24, the kid had inherited Clint's composure under pressure. What's wrong? It's Mom's new husband. His family. A pause. There was an incident at the restaurant where I work. Nelson's brothers came in, started trouble. Said I disrespected them at Mom's birthday dinner last week when I didn't stand when they entered. Clint's jaw tightened. Nelson Schroeder. The cartel lawyer Doris had married 18 months after their divorce. Clint had run a background check the moment Doris mentioned him. Found connections to the Alvarez cartel, a history of making witnesses disappear, and enough dirty money to buy half of Phoenix. Where are you now? St. Joseph's Hospital. Mesa, Arizona. Dad, they didn't just rough me up. Herbert and Stanley, Nelson's brothers, they used bats. Systematically. Like they wanted to send a message. Devin's voice cracked. The doctors say it's bad. Really bad. Clint was already moving, pulling his go bag from the closet. I'm on my way. Don't talk to anyone. Not the police, not Mom. Nobody until I get there. Dad, there's something else. Nelson called me right before they did it. Said I needed to learn respect. That people who disrespect the Schroeder family pay the price. 23 years earlier, Clint Randall had been recruited out of Army Special Forces by a division that didn't appear on any organizational chart. They called themselves the Task Group, though they had no official designation. Their missions ranged from eliminating terrorist cells in countries the U.S. couldn't officially operate in, to recovering assets that couldn't be acknowledged publicly, to making problems disappear in ways that left no trace. Clint had been good at it. Exceptional, even. He could become anyone. A German arms dealer, a Russian oligarch's assistant, a Sudanese warlord's advisor. He spoke 7 languages fluently, could blend into any culture, and had a gift for reading people that bordered on supernatural. But the work took its toll. The lies, the violence, the isolation. When Devin was born, Clint tried to balance both worlds. It was Doris who finally gave him the ultimatum, the job or his family. He chose family, walked away with a clean slate and a new identity in Montana. But Doris never forgave him for the years he was absent, for the secrets he couldn't share, for the man who came home hollow-eyed and distant. The divorce was bitter. She got full custody, moved to Arizona, and forbade Clint from having more than supervised visits until Devin turned 18. Then she married Nelson Schroeder, and Clint watched from a distance as his ex-wife descended into a world of luxury cars, designer clothes, and willful ignorance about where the money came from. The flight from Missoula to Phoenix took 4 hours. Clint used the time to access old networks, calling in favors from people who owed him their lives. By the time he landed, he had a complete dossier on the Schroeder family. Nelson Schroeder, 47, was the legitimate face of a criminal empire. Harvard Law, specialized in international business law, represented clients who dealt in everything from drug trafficking to human smuggling. His courtroom record was impressive, 83% acquittal rate, mostly because witnesses had a habit of disappearing or recanting testimony. Herbert and Stanley Schroeder were Nelson's younger brothers, muscle masquerading as businessmen. Herbert, 42, ran a chain of auto body shops that served as front for chop shops and smuggling operations. Stanley, 39, owned several construction companies used to launder cartel money. Both had assault charges that mysteriously vanished, tied to the same pattern, punishing anyone who showed disrespect. The Schroeder family operated under old world rules. Respect meant everything. Challenge their authority, even accidentally, and you paid in blood. St. Joseph's Hospital smelled of antiseptic and despair. Clint found Devin's room on the 4th floor. What he saw made his blood run cold. His son lay unconscious, face swollen beyond recognition. Tubes ran from his arms. A ventilator breathed for him. The doctor, a tired-looking woman named Dr. Chun, pulled Clint aside. Severe traumatic brain injury. Multiple skull fractures, broken ribs, ruptured spleen, shattered left kneecap. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Maximum damage without immediate death. She consulted her tablet. We've induced a coma to reduce brain swelling. The next 72 hours are critical. If he survives, he's looking at months of physical therapy. The brain injury, we won't know the extent until he wakes up. If he wakes up, Clint nodded, his face a mask of calm. Inside, something ancient and merciless stirred awake. Doris arrived an hour later, her designer heels clicking on the linoleum. She'd aged well, her auburn hair styled perfectly, skin tight from expensive treatments. The diamonds on her fingers could feed a family for a year. When she saw Clint, her expression hardened. You shouldn't be here. Our son is in a coma, Doris. My son. The custody agreement was clear. Her voice dropped. Nelson is handling this through legal channels. Legal channels? Clint's voice was ice. Your husband's brothers did this. There's nothing legal about it. Doris looked away, and in that moment, Clint saw the truth. She knew. Maybe not the specifics, but she knew the kind of man she'd married, the kind of family she'd joined. It was an accident. Devin provoked them at the restaurant. He didn't stand fast enough when they walked in. Clint stepped closer. That's what Herbert told the hostess. Your stepson thought my son should bow. The Schroeder family has certain traditions. Devin should have understood that. Traditions? Clint laughed, a sound without humor. Is that what you call putting a 24-year-old in a coma? Before Doris could respond, her phone rang. She answered, listened, then held out to Clint. Nelson wants to speak with you. Clint took the phone and walked into the hallway. Mr. Randall. Nelson's voice was smooth, confident, with a trace of amusement. I understand you're upset, but your son needed to learn a valuable lesson about respect. Where are your brothers? Herbert and Stanley? They're fine, thanks for asking. Celebrating. Actually, we had quite a laugh about the whole situation. Nelson's tone turned mocking. Your boy squealed like a pig when Stanley went for the knee. Very entertaining. Clint said nothing, his breathing controlled. Each word Nelson spoke filing away in his memory. Here's what's going to happen, Nelson continued. You're going to leave Phoenix, go back to whatever hole you crawled out of, and forget this happened. Because if you try to pursue this legally, criminally, or any other way, I will bury you. I have the best attorneys in the Southwest. I have judges in my pocket. I have connections that reach further than your limited imagination can comprehend. He paused. Your boy learned what happens when he disrespects our family. Sue me. I fucking dare you. The line went dead. Clint stood in the hallway for a full minute, phone still pressed to his ear. A nurse walked past, gave him a concerned look. He smiled at her, the bland smile of a worried father, and handed the phone back to Doris. What did he say? She asked. Nothing important. That night, Clint checked into a motel near the hospital. He sat on the bed, pulled out a burner laptop, and began making calls. To Ivan, who ran an identity mill in Prague. To Sarah, who could access any database in North America. To Marcus, who specialized in logistics and cleanup. To Elena, who provided weapons no questions asked. The task group might have disbanded officially, but the network remained. Favors were called in. Debts were paid. By dawn, Clint had a complete breakdown of the Schroeder family's operations, their daily routines, their vulnerabilities, and their sins. Nelson lived in a fortress-like mansion in Paradise Valley, one of Phoenix's wealthiest neighborhoods. Herbert ran his auto empire from a compound in Tempe. Stanley's construction headquarters was in Scottsdale, attached to a private club where the brothers met every Thursday night. But more importantly, Clint now knew their secrets. The offshore accounts, the shell companies, the bodies buried, literally, under construction sites, the witnesses who disappeared, the prosecutors who'd been bribed or threatened. The Schroeder brothers weren't just criminals. They were monsters who'd gotten away with it because they were smart enough to hide behind legitimate businesses and good attorneys. Nelson Schroeder had made a critical error. He thought Clint was just some ex-military nobody, a footnote in Doris's past. He had no idea who he'd threatened, what he'd unleashed. Clint pulled out a clean notebook and began to write. Not a plan. Plans were for amateurs. He wrote a timeline, a sequence of events that would unfold with mathematical precision, each step building on the last, each action designed to dismantle the Schroeder empire piece by piece. He wouldn't just kill them. That was too easy, too quick. Nelson wanted to teach lessons about respect. Clint would provide a masterclass. On the second day, Clint visited Devin again. His son remained unconscious, machines breathing for him, monitors beeping a steady rhythm. Dr. Chun reported minimal improvement. The swelling was down, but brain activity remained concerningly low. Clint sat beside the bed, holding Devin's hand. "I know you can hear me, kid. I know you're fighting." He squeezed gently. "I'm going to fix this. I'm going to make them pay for what they did to you. And when you wake up, I'll tell you all about it." He meant every word. That afternoon, Clint followed Herbert Schroeder. The older brother kept a predictable schedule, arrived at his flagship auto shop at 9, left at 5, stopped at the same bar for 2 drinks, then drove to his girlfriend's apartment in Chandler. The girlfriend, Ashley Parks according to her mailbox, was 26 and worked as a paralegal at Nelson's firm. Classic. Herbert was sloppy, arrogant. He parked in the same spot, used the same route, never checked his surroundings. Why would he? In his world, he was untouchable. Clint photographed everything. Patterns, weaknesses, opportunities. Stanley was more cautious, but not by much. He traveled with a bodyguard, a thick-necked man named Rodolfo Wu who looked dangerous, but moved with the lazy confidence of someone who'd never faced a real threat. Stanley's Thursday poker nights at the club were sacrosanct. He'd apparently once skipped his own daughter's recital to attend. But it was Nelson who fascinated Clint most. The lawyer moved through Phoenix like royalty, shaking hands at charity events, giving interviews about justice and community, all while running one of the most sophisticated criminal networks in the Southwest. His mansion had 6 security guards rotating shifts, cameras on every corner, and a panic room that could withstand a small army. On paper, Nelson Schroeder was untouchable. On paper meant nothing to Clint Randall. The third day arrived, 72 hours since the beating. Devin's condition stabilized, but didn't improve. Dr. Chun mentioned the word vegetative for the first time, and Clint saw his son's future stretching out. Years in a care facility, the brilliant kid who'd planned to teach history reduced to a body in a bed. That evening, Clint returned to his motel room and opened a metal case he'd picked up from Elena's drop site. Inside were tools of his old trade. Untraceable phones, fake IDs, passports from 6 countries, and something special. A syringe filled with a colorless liquid that would simulate a heart attack so perfectly that even the best medical examiner would find nothing suspicious. But he wasn't going to use it. Not yet. Maybe not at all. Because Nelson Schroeder deserved worse than death. At midnight, Clint made his first move. He drove to Herbert's girlfriend's apartment building, picked the lock on Ashley's car, a red Mercedes that Nelson had probably bought her, and planted a small device under the driver's seat. Not a bomb. Something subtler. Then he drove to Stanley's construction headquarters. The building was dark, security minimal. Clint bypassed the alarm system in 40 seconds, entered through a service door, and spent the next hour in Stanley's private office, photographing every file, every ledger, every incriminating document. The records were a prosecutor's dream, detailed accounts of money laundering, bribery, and enough evidence to put Stanley away for decades. But Clint wasn't interested in legal justice. The system had failed Devin. The police had taken statements, but made no arrests. Nelson's attorneys had already started spinning narratives about a disagreement between young men that got out of hand. No, Clint would provide his own justice. At 3 a.m., he sat in his truck outside Nelson's mansion, studying the security patterns. The guards were professionals, but they followed a routine. North gate check every 20 minutes. South camera sweep every 15. A 6-minute window existed between shifts where someone could enter unseen. Someone with training. Someone who didn't exist in any database. Someone like Clint Randall. He started the engine and drove away. Not yet. The pieces weren't in position. But soon. Very soon. The next morning, Herbert Schroeder left his auto shop at noon, unusual for him. He drove to a warehouse in South Phoenix, an area controlled by the Alvarez cartel. Clint followed from a distance, using techniques that made him invisible in traffic. Herbert met with 3 men, cartel lieutenants by their bearing and the weapons barely concealed under their jackets. They talked for 30 minutes, exchanged a briefcase, then parted ways. Herbert looked pleased with himself as he drove away. Clint followed the cartel men instead. They led him to a distribution hub, a legitimate trucking company that served as a front for drug shipments. He photographed everything, noting faces, license plates, timing. The pieces were coming together. That afternoon, Stanley's bodyguard, Rodolfo, stopped at a gym in Scottsdale. He worked out for 90 minutes, then showered and left. Clint approached him in the parking lot, moving fast and silent. Rodolfo, woo. We need to talk. Rodolfo spun, hand going for the gun at his waist, but Clint was faster. He struck once, a precise blow to the throat that left Rodolfo gasping, then swept his legs. The big man hit the pavement hard. Your boss, Stanley Schroeder, pays you $60,000 a year to stand around and look mean, Clint said calmly. I know about your daughter, Cecilia. 9 years old, lives with your ex-wife in Tucson. Medical bills piling up from her leukemia treatments. You're drowning in debt. Rodolfo's eyes widened. How do you? I know everything. Now here's what's going to happen. Tonight, you're going to be sick. Food poisoning. Can't possibly work. Stanley will be without his shadow for the first time in months. Clint crouched down. Do this, and $200,000 appears in an account I'll give you. Enough for Cecilia's treatments. Enough to start over somewhere safe. And if I refuse, then I tell Stanley about the $50,000 you've been skimming from his petty cash over the last 2 years. His brother Herbert handles that kind of thing with a blowtorch and pliers. Clint's voice was matter-of-fact. Your choice. Help me, get rich, and save your daughter. Or stay loyal to a man who'd kill you without a second thought. Rodolfo stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Food poisoning. Tonight. Smart man. Clint helped him up, handed him a phone number written on a card. Call this number at exactly 6 p.m. Confirm you're out. Don't warn Stanley. Don't contact anyone else. Just make the call and disappear for 48 hours. Then check your account. He walked away, leaving Rodolfo clutching the card like a lifeline. Evening arrived. Devon's monitors continued their steady beep, brain activity showing slight improvements, but nothing definitive. Doris visited briefly, her discomfort palpable. She didn't mention Nelson or his brothers, but she looked tired, older than her years. I never thought it would be like this, she said quietly, staring at their son. When I married Nelson, he promised me security, comfort, a good life. Is this what you wanted? Clint asked. This life, their blood money. I wanted to matter, to be important. Her voice cracked. You were always gone, always on some mission you couldn't talk about. I was invisible. Nelson made me visible. At what cost? Doris didn't answer. She left without saying goodbye. At 6 p.m. exactly, Clint's burner phone rang. Rodolfo's voice, food poisoning. Called in sick. Stanley's pissed, but going alone. Good. The money will be in your account by midnight. Disappear. Thank you. Clint hung up and made 3 more calls. To Marcus, who confirmed the equipment was ready. To Sarah, who'd hacked into Stanley's security system. To Elena, who provided final coordinates. Then he dressed in black, loaded his gear into a nondescript van, and drove to Scottsdale. Thursday night. Poker night. Stanley Schroeder would follow his routine, arrogant and unprotected. And Clint Randall would be waiting. The club was upscale, discreet, the kind of place where powerful men made deals over cigars and cards. Stanley arrived at 8 p.m. sharp, parking his Range Rover in the private lot behind the building. He looked around once, a cursory check, then headed inside. Clint waited 2 hours. He knew the game would last until at least 11, Stanley's pattern unwavering. The lot was empty except for 5 vehicles belonging to the other players. Security was minimal, just cameras that Sarah had looped 40 minutes ago. At 10:45, the back door opened. 2 men emerged, laughing, drunk. Not Stanley. They drove off, leaving 3 cars. At 11:20, another man left. Then another at 11:35. Stanley emerged at 11:50, alone, counting cash with a satisfied smirk. He'd won big tonight. It would be his last victory. Clint moved from the shadows as Stanley reached his Range Rover. Silent, efficient, a ghost made flesh. He pressed the taser to Stanley's neck before the man could react. 50,000 volts, dropping him like a puppet with cut strings. Stanley convulsed, then went limp. Clint zip-tied his wrists and ankles, gagged him with professional efficiency, and dragged him to the van. The whole operation took 40 seconds. Marcus was driving. He pulled out of the lot calmly, obeying every traffic law, just another commercial vehicle on a Thursday night. In the back, Stanley began to wake up, eyes rolling in panic. Clint watched him with clinical detachment. Don't struggle. You'll only hurt yourself. He pulled out a syringe, something to keep Stanley manageable but conscious. We have a long night ahead. They drove to a warehouse Marcus had secured in Guadalupe, one of Phoenix's forgotten corners. The building had been abandoned for years. No neighbors, no witnesses. Inside, Clint had prepared a room, soundproofed, isolated, a space where screams wouldn't matter. He dragged Stanley inside and secured him to a chair bolted to the floor. Then he removed the gag. Stanley spat blood, eyes wild. Do you have any idea who I am? Who my brother is? You're dead. You're fucking dead. Your brother Nelson knows exactly who I am now, Clint said calmly. He just doesn't understand what that means. Yet, he held up his phone, showing Stanley a photo of Herbert's warehouse from earlier. Your brother Herbert is currently conducting cartel business without proper authorization from the Alvarez family's top brass. I have photographs, recordings, evidence of him skimming profits. The cartel leadership is very interested in people who steal from them. Stanley's face paled. You're lying. By dawn, Herbert will be missing. The cartel will assume he ran with their money. They'll hunt him. They'll find him. Clint's voice was emotionless. And when they do, they'll make him talk. He'll give up everything. Your operations, Nelson's clients, all of it. You can't. Already did. Herbert is being picked up as we speak by men who think he betrayed them. Clint leaned closer. Your baby brother is about to learn what happens when you cross the cartels. It won't be pretty. Stanley thrashed against his restraints. Nelson will stop you. He'll. Nelson is currently unconscious in his panic room. Gas grenade through the ventilation system. Very effective. He'll wake up in approximately 6 hours, confused and alone, wondering why his security team hasn't responded. That's because they're all receiving lucrative job offers from competitor, offers contingent on them walking away tonight and forgetting they ever worked for Nelson Schroeder. The color drained completely from Stanley's face. Your empire is falling apart, Stanley. Right now, this moment, everything you built, everyone you terrorized, all of it crumbling. And you get a front row seat. Clint checked his watch. In 30 minutes, your construction headquarters will experience a catastrophic electrical fire. The suppression system will malfunction. Every file, every ledger, every record gone. Insurance will investigate and find evidence of arson, which voids your policy. You'll be financially ruined before sunrise. Why? Stanley's voice broke. What did we do to you? You put my son in a coma. Devin Randall, 24 years old, history teacher, never hurt anyone in his life. You beat him with bats because he didn't stand fast enough for your ego. Stanley's eyes widened with recognition and terror. We were just teaching him respect. Respect. Clint's laugh was cold. Let me teach you about respect. For 27 years, I was a ghost. I eliminated problems for people who run this country. Terrorists, war criminals, threats that needed to disappear without trials or questions. I killed 43 people in my career, Stanley. 43. Each one deserved it more than your next breath. He pulled out a photo of Devin in the hospital, tubes and machines keeping him alive. This is respect. Protecting your child. Being willing to burn down the world for them. He put the photo away. You and your brothers thought you were monsters. You're not. You're spoiled children playing at power. And tonight, you meet a real monster. Stanley began to sob, the facade of toughness evaporating. Please, I'm sorry. We made a mistake. I'll make it right. You'll do nothing. Clint stood. Because you're going somewhere special. Somewhere your money and name mean nothing. Somewhere your brother's legal genius can't help you. He injected Stanley with a sedative, watching the man's eyes roll back as unconsciousness claimed him. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Herbert's secured. Cartel took the bait. They have him at a secondary location interrogating him about the missing money. And Nelson, gas worked perfectly. He's out cold in his panic room. The mansion's empty. Security team took the payment and vanished. By morning, every asset Nelson has will be frozen. His accounts flagged for investigation by federal authorities courtesy of those documents from Stanley's office. Good. Clint looked down at Stanley's unconscious form. Load him up. It's time for the Schroeder brothers to learn about hell. The warehouse in Guadalupe had a secondary room deeper in the building. Clint had spent 2 days preparing it. No windows, no escape, soundproofing so complete that a gunshot would sound like a whisper outside. He'd also installed something special, a live feed, cameras with night vision, microphones that picked up every sound. The feed transmitted to 3 locations. A server Marcus controlled, a thumb drive Clint kept on his person, and directly to Nelson's phone. When Nelson woke up, he'd see everything. Herbert arrived an hour later, bruised and bleeding. The cartel had worked him over, extracted confessions about operations Herbert had never actually performed. Marcus had fed them false information, convinced them Herbert was a traitor, and they'd responded with predictable violence. He's broken, Marcus reported, kept babbling about his brother Nelson, about lawyers who could fix this. The cartel boys laughed at him. Bring him in. They secured Herbert next to Stanley, both brothers zip-tied to reinforced chairs. Clint waited for them to wake naturally. He wanted them fully aware for what came next. At 4 a.m., Herbert stirred first, groaning. His left eye was swollen shut, his lips split, teeth missing. The cartel had enjoyed their work. Stanley. Herbert's voice was slurred. Stanley, where? Right here, brother. Stanley's voice was hoarse, defeated. We're fucked. We're completely fucked. What are you? Herbert focused on Clint, standing in the shadows. Who the hell is this? Clint Randall. Devin's father. Understanding dawned, followed by terror. Oh God. Oh God, no. Yes. Clint stepped forward. Your brother Nelson called me 3 days ago. Laughed about what you did to my son. Told me to sue him, that I couldn't touch him. He was wrong. Listen, we can pay you. Whatever you want. $1 million. $2 million. Name your price. My son is in a coma. He might never wake up. If he does, the doctors say he'll need years of therapy, might never be the same. There's no price for that, Herbert. No amount of money makes this right. Stanley found his voice. You've already won. You destroyed our businesses, turned the cartel against us. You've beaten us. Please, just let us go. We'll disappear. You'll never see us again. Clint considered this, then shook his head. No, because next month, next year, you'd rebuild. You buy your way out, bribe judges, intimidate witnesses. You'd be back to terrorizing people, hurting anyone who didn't show proper respect. The cycle would continue. He pulled out a knife, and both brothers flinched. But Clint simply cut a piece of rope, testing its strength. I could kill you. Easy. Quick. But that's mercy you didn't show Devin when you beat him with bats. He set the knife down. Instead, I'm giving you to people who hate you far more than I do. People you've wronged, cheated, terrorized. The families of witnesses who disappeared. The workers you exploited. The communities you destroyed with your drugs and violence. Herbert's face went white. You can't. I can. I have addresses, names, proof of what you've done. The cartel thinks you betrayed them. The families of your victims think you're responsible for their pain. By dawn, they'll all know where to find you. That's murder. Stanley screamed. You're going to have us murdered. No, I'm going to have you judged. By the people whose lives you ruined. Whatever they decide to do with you is justice. Real justice. Not the bought and paid for kind Nelson specializes in. Clint turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and about your brother Nelson. He's going to wake up soon. Alone. Everything he has, everything he's built, gone. His brother's vanished. His mansion in ashes. His reputation destroyed. and he'll receive a video feed showing exactly what happens to you. Every moment, every second, he'll watch and know he can't stop it, can't save you, can't do anything but suffer. Please, Herbert sobbed. Please, we're sorry. We made a mistake. We'll do anything. You're right. You made a mistake. You hurt my son, and now you pay the price. Clint walked out of the room. Behind him, the brothers screamed for mercy, their voices echoing in the soundproof space where no one could hear them. Marcus was waiting by the van. The families have been contacted. They'll be here within the hour. What do you want me to do? Give them access. Let them have their justice. Record everything for Nelson. Clint climbed into the van, then disappear. New identity, new life. Take the money we discussed and get out of Phoenix. And you? I have one more stop to make. Nelson Schroeder woke up in darkness, his head pounding, throat burning. He tried to move and found himself on a cold floor, hands zip-tied behind his back. Panic flooded through him as memory returned, gas filling his panic room, his security team not responding, the feeling of helplessness as consciousness faded. Hello. His voice echoed in the empty space. Is anyone there? Lights suddenly blazed alive, blinding him. As his eyes adjusted, Nelson realized he wasn't in his panic room anymore. This was somewhere else, a basement, concrete walls, no windows. Industrial. And sitting across from him, calm as death, was Clint Randall. Welcome back, Nelson. Nelson's mind raced, legal training kicking in despite his terror. Whatever you're planning, it's a federal crime. Kidnapping across state lines is. We're still in Phoenix. And I don't care about federal crimes. My lawyers will find me. My security team. Your security team is in Mexico with new identities and $200,000 each. They won't be looking for you. Clint held up a phone. Your lawyers are currently being raided by the FBI based on documents I provided showing their involvement in witness tampering and money laundering. They're facing disbarment at minimum, federal charges at worst. No one's coming to help you, Nelson. The carefully constructed arrogance began to crack. What do you want? Money? I have offshore accounts. Frozen. All of them. The IRS received detailed information about your financial crimes. By now, federal agents are tearing through every account, every shell company, every hidden asset. You're broke, Nelson. Completely and utterly broke. Nelson's breath came in short gasps. This is insane. You can't just. I already did. Clint tapped the phone screen. Let me show you something. A video feed appeared, grainy but clear. Herbert and Stanley, tied to chairs, surrounded by people Nelson recognized. Families of witnesses who disappeared, workers his brothers had exploited, rivals they destroyed. The people looked angry, vengeful, holding improvised weapons. No. Nelson lunged forward, but Clint easily pushed him back. Your brothers are receiving justice. Real justice. From the people they hurt. You can't do this. This is murder. Is it? I'm not touching them. I simply provided information to interested parties about where your brothers could be found. What those parties choose to do is their business. Clint's voice was clinical. Much like how you provided information to your brothers about where my son worked, what time he left, how best to catch him alone. You didn't swing the bats, but you're just as guilty. Nelson watched the screen, horror mounting as the families advanced on his brothers. Herbert was screaming. Stanley was praying, both begging for mercy they'd never shown their own victims. Turn it off, Nelson whispered. Please, turn it off. No, you're going to watch. Every second. And when it's over, you're going to think about my son, lying in a hospital bed in a coma, tubes breathing for him, machines keeping him alive. You're going to think about the phone call you made to me, laughing about what your brothers did. And you're going to understand that there are consequences. Real consequences. For people like you. I'll give you anything. Nelson begged, tears streaming down his face. Everything I have. My connections, my clients, everything. To stop this. Please. Everything you have is already gone. Your mansion burned to the ground an hour ago. Electrical fire started in the panic room when you triggered the gas system. The whole place went up. Your wife, my ex-wife Doris, made it out with the clothes on her back and nothing else. She's at a hotel, broke and terrified, realizing that marrying a monster has consequences. Clint leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper. You told me lawyers couldn't help me. You were right. But lawyers can't help you either, Nelson. Not where you're going. The video feed continued, the sounds of Herbert and Stanley's punishment filling the small space. Nelson couldn't look away, forced to witness the destruction of his brothers, his family, his empire. Hours passed. The sun rose somewhere above them. Phoenix waking to news of the Schroeder mansion burning, reports of missing persons, federal raids on law offices. When it was finally over, when the video feed went dark, Nelson sat broken and hollow. His brothers were gone. Everything he'd built was destroyed. He was ruined. Clint stood and walked to the door. What are you going to do with me? Nelson asked, his voice barely audible. I'm going to let you live, Clint said. But not the way you used to. See, the cartel your brothers worked for? They think you set Herbert up, stole their money, destroyed their distribution network. They're very interested in talking to you. They'll kill me. Probably. But that's between you and them. Clint opened the door, revealing Marcus and two men wearing cartel colors. Gentlemen, he's all yours. As promised. Nelson's screams followed Clint out of the building. 2 weeks later, Clint sat beside Devin's hospital bed. The monitors showed improvement, stronger brain activity, more responsiveness to stimuli. Dr. Chan was cautiously optimistic about a recovery, though the extent remained uncertain. The swelling's almost gone, Dr. Chan explained. We're going to try reducing sedation tomorrow. If his brain activity continues improving, we might see him wake up within days. Clint held his son's hand. Did you hear that, kid? You're going to make it. Devin's fingers twitched slightly. It was the best sign Clint had seen in weeks. The news reported extensively on the Schroeder family's collapse. Herbert and Stanley's bodies were found in the desert, victims of what police called cartel violence. Nelson Schroeder had disappeared, last seen in surveillance footage being taken by unknown men from a location in South Phoenix. Federal investigators were pursuing charges related to money laundering, witness tampering, and connections to organized crime. Doris visited Devin daily now, stripped of her designer clothes and jewelry, living in a modest apartment funded by Clint. She didn't ask questions about what happened, didn't mention Nelson or his brothers. The truth was written in her eyes. She knew her husband had destroyed himself, that karma had come calling, that marrying into the Schroeder family had cost her everything. Thank you, she said to Clint one afternoon. For letting me survive this. You're Devin's mother. He needs you. Clint's voice was measured. What Nelson and his brothers did, that's on them. You were a fool, Doris, but you weren't evil. There's a difference. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I'm sorry. For everything. For not believing you about them. For choosing money over morals. For just be here for our son. That's all that matters now. 3 days later, Devin's eyes opened. Confused at first, disoriented, but alive and aware. The doctors ran tests, evaluated his cognitive function, and delivered miraculous news. The brain damage was minimal. With therapy, he'd make a full recovery. Dad, Devin's voice was weak but clear. What happened? Clint smiled, the first genuine smile in weeks. You had an accident, but you're going to be okay. You're going to be fine. The Schroeders, Herbert and Stanley. They're gone, son. They can't hurt you anymore. They can't hurt anyone anymore. Devin studied his father's face, and in that moment, understanding passed between them. The unspoken truth of what Clint had done, the price he'd extracted, the justice he'd delivered. Is it over? Devin asked. It's over. 6 months later, Clint returned to his cabin in Montana. Devin was fully recovered, back to teaching history, planning to testify at federal hearings about cartel operations as new investigations uncovered the full scope of the Schroeder Empire's crimes. Doris had rebuilt her life modestly, taking a job as a paralegal at a legitimate firm, attending therapy, working to understand how she'd lost her way. She and Clint maintained a cordial relationship, united by their son's recovery. Marcus had disappeared into a new identity, living quietly somewhere on the California coast. Elena, Sarah, and Ivan had moved on to other projects. The Schroeder operation, just another day's work for people who specialized in making problems disappear. And Nelson Schroeder? His body was found 3 months after his disappearance, in a shallow grave outside Hermosillo. The Mexican authorities ruled it cartel violence, another casualty in an endless war. Clint felt nothing when he heard the news. No satisfaction, no regret. Just the cold confirmation that justice had been served. He sat on his porch, cleaning his father's Winchester, watching the sun set over the Bitterroot Mountains. The phone rang. Devin calling to share news about his first day back at work, his students, his life returning to normal. "I'm proud of you, kid," Clint said, and meant it. After hanging up, Clint allowed himself a moment of reflection. 27 years as a ghost operative had taught him many lessons, but the most important was this: monsters were real. They wore suits, practiced law, built empires on blood and fear. They believed money and connections made them untouchable. But monsters could be stopped by someone willing to become a monster themselves, temporarily, to protect the innocent. By someone who understood that sometimes true justice existed outside courtrooms and legal codes. The Schroeder brothers had thought they were teaching Devin Randall a lesson about respect. Instead, they'd learned the most important lesson of all. Some fathers would burn down heaven and hell itself for their children. Some fathers were ghosts who could reach from the shadows and destroy everything you'd built, everything you were, everything you'd ever be. And some lessons were written in blood. Clint finished cleaning his rifle, locked it away, and went inside. The cabin was warm, familiar, safe. Tomorrow he'd call Devin again, maybe plan a visit. Life would go on. The world would turn. And somewhere in the darkness, other monsters would rise. But that was tomorrow's problem. Tonight, Clint Randall slept peacefully for the first time in months, knowing his son was safe, justice was served, and the ghosts of his past had been put to good use one final time. The story ended the way all good stories should, with the hero victorious, the villains punished, and the promise that evil, no matter how powerful it believes itself to be, can always be defeated by someone willing to pay the price. And Clint Randall had always been willing to pay.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.